I've had the pleasure of seeing, working with you and seeing not necessarily bad gigs, because I feel like you're the kind of comic that, yeah, right.
Here we go.
Yeah. No, I've had the pleasure of seeing not necessarily hell gigs, which I'm sure you have stories of, and I've heard a little bit, but you have might have the record of people that are you're at a good gig and then somebody will try to make it bad. I mean, I don't know what it is, but you you do have the record. I think like drunk women standing up out of nowhere and taking a call or yelling at you or yelling at their husband. I mean, what is that?
I don't know. You know what I do think? I think that, and let's be honest, it's women, right,
It
Collin?
is
It's truly women.
always women.
It's never a guy. Early in my career, guys would yell, "Hey, show me your tits," or da, da. That's when early on. But when they pick on men and they say that men are dumb, like whatever, I hear women say all this stupid stuff. Men adapt.
Yeah.
Men recognize. Like, I think that's why so many men show up at my show, as you can attest to. Like, people are like, "Oh yeah, sure, she appeals to guys," but really, guys will even come in groups by themselves to
Oh,
my show
absolutely.
because they know I'm strong and I'm tough, and I think they're smart enough, unless they're really drunk or they're not aware of the entity
Right.
that is me. They'll start.
Right.
Mostly it's women because they need so much freaking attention. Like,
Yeah.
and it's usually women that used to be super hot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they're too old to strip. So they just need to jump in, and they just need the tension. It's like they sit there like whack-a-moles. Like they just try, I need someone to look at me. Someone look at me. You're looking at her. And then they just explode and
They
lose their.
explode.
Can I swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, you can swear. You can
Okay.
swear. Yeah. Yeah. It is almost like a routine now where if you see like a drunk older woman in the front row, you almost know that she's going to say something at some point. Like, it's crazy.
You do.
Yeah.
You always tell me. That's why I love working with you, because you'll get off stage and you'll go, watch this one, stage right. She's a little, I don't know, she might be on the border.
Right. Yeah. She's getting feisty. Yeah. Oh my God. And
You
it's
don't leave the room during those. It's funny because I'll be in one of those tete-a-tete, if you will,
yeah.
with the lunatic, and I can guarantee that I look over to wherever the comics sit or the green room is, and I see your face just giggling with glee because
Yeah.
you've been waiting for me to annihilate that person.
It's something. It's like I want to almost tell these people, like, hey, I can feel it in you. You're gonna say something. Please don't. Like, I've seen it too many times before. It's not gonna end well. I mean, to the point where you have like people get so upset that they leave. I mean, you don't let them go. You're like, hey, this is my show, and then these. And then some person's chasing his wife out of the club.
Right, apologizing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Right, like always, the husband comes back and apologizes, and that's another thing. Like then it creates another thing, and then I'm like, no, don't apologize to me. I'm sorry for you that you picked this lunatic, because what you're gonna have to hear on the car ride home. If I ever show up on television and you pause for more than 2 seconds on my face, she's gonna go crazy.
Right.
We know that and you know what? I used to take it really personal. I
Yeah.
used to think, what did I do? Why doesn't that lady like me? Because they all start out like my friends, right?
Yes. They'll chime in with like, oh, yeah, go ahead, girl. Right. And then it turns into like being on your team to all of a sudden they're just like, oh, can't believe she's talking about that. And you're like, excuse me?
Right.
Like, it's like a flip of a switch.
Because they've forgotten that I don't need them.
Right.
Whatever need for attention I had to have to get on stage has long been satiated.
Yeah.
I now have a job to do, and I have another 200 people in the room that I have to make sure come back. because retention with comedy is what breeds success. I can't sell 20,000 tickets, like Sebastian can, but what I can do is those 200 people that show up, I can try to guarantee you those 200 people will come back if
Absolutely.
they get my show.
And they do,
Slowly. I got a grassroots campaign I'll probably sell out 20,000 tickets. I got it figured out. I'll be 214 years old.
And you will still be working. If there's anybody that will still be working at that age, it'll be you, and it'll be wonderful. And you'll still be, people will still think they could take you on.
Well, it's funny because what's silly is I think that I'm likable, and I do think that more than I'm funny, I know that I'm likable on stage. That's one thing I've always had. Any of those television things, whenever they do the focus groups, I'm always way in the 90s on likability, 90th percentile on likability. People, I'm like someone's friend or sister, right. but I like them because I truly love my job. So I'm glad, and that's an honor. But what about me makes you think that you can interrupt me?
Right.
Maybe once.
Right.
What about this persona makes you think that you can take this show from me? That I'm going to let you be funnier than me when my mortgage is predicated on this performance?
Right. And knowing that the attitude that you have on stage, if there's anything, it's not all like some people, they go on stage, oh, you see, that's an act, right? But what's nice is that you are the same person you are off stage as you are on stage, in for some degree. And that attitude, of the hardworking, hustling, but also no bullshit attitude. I'm sure when you were starting out, I'm sure you found yourself in some places where you're like, how did I get here? But they're not gonna break me,
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I just watched, that's the beauty of all this stuff. I just watched some of my earliest footage that in 1995, I was younger than you. Mm-hmm. It was my first year in comedy. And I ready to be a professional, where we had to take videotapes and you had to get 2 VCRs and dub them and then get yellow pages to figure out where the clubs are to mail them to them, right? Yeah. And my material was fine. It was okay for that stage of the game. And I have to say, no one was really of female comics back then at that level. It was fine. The problem is I just so wanted to be liked. Yeah. That it's I see that girl and I'm like, oh my God, now I don't care.
And that experience is so freeing, I'd have to imagine, because when you're starting, I'm sure you took gigs that made no sense, and were awful. But now you have right. I don't care. I don't need these people to like me.
Right. I mean, not that I don't want to make them laugh, but and that comes from both sides of the coin too, because some of the audiences are amazing, but some of the treatment from the clubs and the club owners or the bookers, the place I met you, truly it was a hellacious gig. Right?
I wanted to talk about that. So how we met was at Seven Springs, at that resort in Pennsylvania, upstate Pennsylvania, whatever it is. And it was so bad. I was like shaking. I was so green, and you were so gracious that we were essentially trying to manage the show for somebody else. We were supposed to do the show, and then there were TVs on. People were sitting on couches in the back. The lights are on. At one point, you were like, "Is this your first time doing comedy?" to the sound guy. And he goes, "No, we do it all the time." And you were like, "Huh, doesn't seem like it."
I was straight up.
It was so bad.
Because you know what? If we're going to fail, let us fail on our own merits.
Exactly.
Not because everybody thinks doing stand-up it's like some people can't tell a joke, right? I'm doing that show with my son where we're teaching kids jokes, on Facebook, just silly jokey jokes. And most people don't know how to tell one good joke, let alone you have to entertain strangers with all of your little, tidbits and the malarkey. So least let us physically set the stage, if you will. That place too, by the way, when we're talking about that, for people who don't get it, they're in their minds. That's the one problem when you tell stories about comedy clubs, okay? Yeah. Because people picture what they know. Yeah. And they're all different. If you talk to people from Pittsburgh, they're picturing the Improv or maybe the old Funny Bone. That's what they think all the clubs look like. All the clubs don't look like that, okay? Right. They don't know. That gig at Seven Springs, although Seven Springs is an amazing resort and I love it, where they had it was like a college rathskeller, like a down below, pillars everywhere, random seating, standing up. There's a bar. People are ordering drinks at the bar. Like, it was just like, hey, you guys want to do comedy? There you go, you know? And it could have worked beautifully. And I think what we pulled out of it, because what we did is we shut off the lights and told them not to make the drinks. And I think we pulled a pretty good show out of it. But, you know.
Yeah. Thankfully, you helped save it more than I did. I mean, you called me onto the stage, which was nice, because they were like, you could just start. And I was like, just start. These people I mean, there's, what are you talking about? And you like did the voice of God from off stage, because the sound guy was like, no, I don't do that. It's like, you can't say my name?
Right, you can't. And I had to give them, that's the one thing. When I came up in a different time I worked my way from open mic to MC to feature to special, to split week headliner to special engagement sometimes now. But the Funny Bones across the country used to play this song, and then they just, the whole thing, I know I could probably quote it in my sleep. If I'm ever on a vent, I'm probably would be saying it. I'm like literally, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the wherever you are, the Quad City Funny Bone. Tonight we have 2 rules and 2 rules only. Keep your table talk to a minimum and no flash photography during the show. Please remember to silence your cell phones for your pleasure and ours. Now, without further ado, please welcome to the stage. I mean, it's rote. I don't understand why. I don't know why I have this pen, because I'm doing a class. That's why.
Yeah.
But it's that's, people think that they can put, now conversely, one of the worst gigs I ever did wasn't because of the gig or the people. It was the place. I was in Iraq. I was doing a USO tour. Well, first let's back up.
Okay.
Sometimes, again, it's not about the gig and it's not about the people. And it's not about the place. It's about this, where they keep you.
Yep.
In the old days, we used to all stay in condos.
Yes.
And condos, it sounds pretty, right? Condo, people go, oh, wow, it's higher and be the condo. And it was great. No. These are just crappy apartments that someone from the club cleans. It was usually either the promiscuous waitress or the person who sold pot. So you know how clean that apartment was.
Right.
Sometimes they didn't even have keys. Sometimes they, and I was in Omaha at the Funny Bone with our wonderful friend Collin.
Yes.
And she was the manager, and she's the manager there. I was featuring for a comic who shall remain nameless, but he's a close talker with bad breath, if that'll help some people out. Married. And one night, I think it was like Wednesday. It was early in the week because we used to do shows Tuesday through Sunday.
Right.
So I think it might have been early, Tuesday or Wednesday. There was a group of people that were adults, but they were really challenged. You could tell that some of them had physical affectations, some of them, but they were so sweet. And they came to the show. And afterwards, we, took pictures, whatever we did. I don't know if we took pictures like cell phone, but whatever. I've always been really touched by that. And I saw that the headliner went over to talk to them too. And to be perfectly honest with you, I thought, wow, I feel sorry for them because his breath is really kicking tonight. Right. But I thought, how sweet it is that I really thought, because, you can tell who a person is by how they treat the wait staff and how they treat people who have challenges and difficulties. So I see him talking to this group of people. And I thought, wow, what a great guy. I didn't know him. Okay. And I used to have to go live with these random men, I mean, and then.
I don't think people totally get is like, imagine 52 weekends of the year you are taken out of your home and put into a dirty small condo with a random older guy, Yes.
Especially as an MC, when I started as an MC, I would be with two guys.
Right.
And if you got there early, you had to sit on the couch and wait until, because sometimes it wasn't obvious which was the MC's room. So you had to wait for them, the headliner and the feature, to come in and pick their rooms.
Right.
But that's why I never dated comics, because I grew up with an athlete father, and I knew that if I slept with one, I'd never be able to refute sleeping with all of them.
Yeah.
Because there weren't a lot of women going through it. There certainly wasn't. I'm not saying I was a beauty queen, but comparatively back that day, in those days, and I was 23, 24, 20, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I just slept with none of them. And then so when people go, they were like, no, you didn't. So guys ended up, I'm so stupid. I wanted to make it on my merit, and you see where that got me.
Well, I think you're better off for sure. Anyway.
So I'm in the, so I'm staying with the close talker in the condo.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what a nice guy. And I actually say, as he's saying, talking to the group of people, hey, do you need a ride back to the condo? Because it was always our job to take the headliner too, by the way. And he's like, no, I'm good. Okay, I go back to the condo, and this is like the late 90s. I'm plugging in my computer to the dial-up, because there was only one phone line in the living room. And all of a sudden the condo door opens, and oh, sorry, hear my dog. So the condo door opens, and it's the headliner. And then following him was one of the girls from the group.
Right.
Now, she looked, this sound like, just take it for what it was.
Right.
You couldn't immediately tell that she was challenged.
Right. Just
on appearances. But then once you realized she was in pajamas, and it became clear that she was not of her full faculties.
Yeah.
And she came, and it's a lot harder to tell this story now than it was 5 years ago.
Just so you know. You're doing it very well. You're doing it very well.
And so she immediately came in the room, and having no presence of space, sat right next to me and was on the computer. What are you doing? What's that? She'd never seen anything. What? Oh, what's that? And I just I couldn't. It happened all so fast. I couldn't comprehend why she was here, how she get here, how did he get home, and I saw at that moment he had walked back down the hallway, put his bag in the room, and was standing at his door. So I could look down and see him at his door, and he said, hey, come here. And I got up thinking, hey, doggy, say hi. I got up thinking he was talking to me.
Right.
And he said, no, not you, her. And she walked down the hall, and they proceeded to have the most god-awful, loud sex that I have ever heard. And I don't, every noise that you would assume would be associated with a bad breath headliner and a mentally challenged young girl. Now, I literally had a bag phone that cost $17 a minute.
Right.
And I called Colleen, and I held it to the door. Yes. And I said, please come get me. Because this guy is doing, and maybe nowadays people go, well, why wouldn't you go get her? Well, clearly she wanted to do that. Okay. Right. There was no forcing in it. She was I wouldn't have been able to stop her if I wanted to. I would have got beat up.
Right. You had to go with a fireman's hose.
That's right, because she kept coming back, and Colleen came and got me, and I stayed with her that whole week. But that girl came back every single night. And finally, by the end of the week, and I kept avoiding the headliner all week. And finally, on the last night, I looked at him. I said, I don't understand. I said, I mean, listen, I've seen a lot of stuff. You don't know how much stuff I've seen with men. And I mean, I had my suitcase stolen twice by strippers, right? Like, you know, and a stripper in the house is a prostitute. Let's not get it twisted. I literally don't understand. And he said, I'm married. And if she tells anybody, who's going to believe her?
Wow.
And it was like, you big piece of shit. Like, I literally hated that guy.
Yes.
And then a year later, I'm landing in Fallujah, and I get off the plane for the USO tour and end up on the military base. And there he is.
Right.
And I'm, holy shit, I'm going to die. Because this guy's karma is so horrible. Horrible. Like, I wouldn't stand next to him. Everywhere we went, I wouldn't go in the same car. You know, there's this. Then we went over to like Dubai, and we went to Kuwait, and Kuwait to Iran and Iraq, or to Iraq, has that strip of road that literally is, they call it the highway to hell. You see it in all those movies, the Ice Cube and Mark Wahlberg and Clooney movie. And we're driving. I wouldn't get in the same car with him.
Right.
And they were like, well, we were only going to take one. And I'm like, no, I think I got a lot of luggage to bring. I'm making that up. I literally had nothing to bring, because you know how I pack. I'm not like a girl like that. I'm like, no, I'd be more I get car sick. I got to sit up front. I was making up every excuse, diva-ish, because I was not riding that highway to hell where they have all those missiles and stuff and drone things. I was not getting in the car with him because his car sucked so bad. And I think, and then that was the gig. Driving through there, we went to Camp New York, which was just over the borderline in Iraq. And we did a show that it was a hell gig in the sense, because there was a huge sandstorm, like in the middle, right? But what was really cool is you got on base and you couldn't even tell that there was going to be a show. Because you go to Air Force bases and they got Haagen-Dazs and like crushed velvet carpeting. You'd go to Army bases and they'd have tents, and you'd go to Marine bases and they'd be digging holes in the sand and laying their sleeping bags down. And this was a combined Army Marine base. And we got there and no one was around. And then as it got darker, all of a sudden, these trucks started coming in, and they were coming in from everywhere. And it was really cool. It's like Good Morning Vietnam, where the trucks lit the stage.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we had, not only did we have that guy, but we had another, who shall remain nameless, asshole, country singer who made millions of dollars singing how proud he was to be an American. And he was on the show, and in the middle of the show, the sandstorm came, okay? And it's crazy. I mean, when I say sandstorm, it looked like all those things you see, and then a mummy's gonna follow out behind.
Were you like freaking out?
Right, completely freaking out. But when I looked out, because you know who I am, like, what do? I always watch the audience, right?
Right.
In the middle, they were moving. The military men and women were like sitting there on their trucks. They just kind of adjusted. They're so used, and they were so desperate. I don't want to say desperate. That's not good. They just felt they needed a piece of home. And that's the one thing. You didn't have to be famous. I don't think I'd even been on television at this point for this tour. They just wanted a piece of home. They weren't moving. So when he got off and he was like, I'm not saying, I can't sing, it's going to go down my throat, whatever. And then I said to the close talker, I'm like, you go, because it was his turn. I'd already went. Right. He was like, no way, I'm not doing that. And I was like, pussies. And I just grabbed the mic and I did my whole show like this. I said, listen, guys, I know you probably know half my material already, because I was young in it. And I'm like, well, let's talk about some jokey jokes. And I just did it sideways. I said, you'll only get to see the side of my nose. So if you weren't in bad conditions in war, now look at this. Like, you know. And,
oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's awesome, though, that you were able to take control, and that really is your thing. It's like you will take control of any situation and turn it. You'll make it as good as it can be. But I can't imagine just like that guy had a one-way ticket on that trip from God. It probably felt like he wasn't going home.
Handle it. People were like, "Are you nervous to go over there?" And I said I wasn't, because at the time I was like, I was single. I had nothing. I had no kids, nothing. No, I mean, I only have one now that I know, but like I had nothing. So I thought, if I die, then at least my parents don't have to pay for my funeral. Like, like it'll be a military thing. It'll be good.
Right.
But when I saw that he was there, that's when I got scared.
Yeah.
It wasn't the whole time I had the ticket, when I was getting my shots, getting my DOD card, none of that. They're like, it's Iraq, none of it. I could care less. When I saw him, I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. This is it, we're dying. I think the other worst gig I ever had was the woman that I wrote the joke about, the joke I do. I try not to do it anymore, but you see a white woman over 40 with a flower in her hair and you're not in Hawaii.
Right.
Crazy stuff's about to go down. That's a true story. The venue I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and everything had been going great. But the venue had banquet style tables, meaning the whole row, if you're at the front by the stage, you gotta walk past 30 people or whatever. It was a Thursday night, and we did really well, because I had a little bit of TV credits at that point, and I think we were sold out. And there was a woman up front, and she hadn't paid attention to me whatsoever. I was telling jokes about, at that point, like, if you're flashing your breasts, and then I can't even remember how the joke goes, but then you'll go like, I can't find a good man. I'm like, yeah, because you're a whore, that kind of stuff. And now you don't slut shame, so whatever. But back then you could, and we still do now, just privately, internally, to stop pretending that we don't. But when I said that, she was done with me.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't even have the politeness to get up and leave. She just decided, she grabbed her phone. And let's also be clear that the MC had problems with her.
Mm-hmm.
The feature act had problems with her, but they didn't know how to throw her out. That was a club. A lot of times people think a club is well run, the way the improvs are, or the funny bones. Right. Sometimes you get there and it's like somebody who, it's in a hotel.
Yep.
And they really don't run the room, and they don't have security. They have no protocol they just let it be a free-for-all, right? And there was no manager on duty that night. The manager hadn't shown up. The owner wasn't on property. And everybody had told her to be quiet. And I had told her a few times, look, you need to stop, because she just kept talking, doing cheers. And they kept serving her too, by the way.
Of course.
And that's how you sound too, you morons. No one hears, and you could literally have the cure for coronavirus. But when you're drunk, yelling stuff out at a comedy club, all we hear is, it's the opposite of the Charlie Brown wah wah. We hear, you sound like yeah, right, dog? So anyway, she gets her phone out at one point, and I'm ready for the dismount. I mean, checks are dropped. I'm happy. It's been a great show. We've been having fun. Now, here's something else. There was a group of Marines that had seen me over now, I don't think it was that tour of the one that I did with Close Talker, but they had been there. So imagine how loyal they are, right? They're playing with me the whole time. Then there was a group of African-American women that I was seeing eye to eye with, and they were loving me, right?
Right.
And for some reason, she couldn't handle that. Right. And she started with her phone, and I'm like, hey, I go, all right. I go, well, I say to the audience, all right, pardon me, excuse me for the interruption. And I go, what are you watching? And she's like, porn. And I'm like, oh, apparently you didn't hear that whore joke at all.
Right. And
then she goes, I don't listen because you make fun of your husband. And I go, well, I love him. Do you know what I'm going to do to you? And I said, no, come on, we can be friends. Let's just let it go. And she goes, your jeans are cheap, which, by the way, they weren't. At that time, I had money. Now she'd be, I don't even have pants on during this interview. So she'd be great. Like, I'm still wearing like my husband's boxers as I'm talking to you. But then I was like, what are you talking about? My jeans are cheap. And before I could even say anything to her, she didn't throw like they do on Dynasty or those old soap operas, wine on me like, I never. And she threw her whole glass of wine at me. It literally, and when I tell you, she was, I don't know what would be a distance that I could explain. Have you ever been on an elevator in the United States of America? How about that? Not in Europe, those are very small. But if you stand at the back of the elevator in the front, it's only like a person or two people away. One, right?
Right.
She's literally a person away. And she threw the glass. As I was looking over here at my head, and it hit me and bounced off the brick wall. I was covered in red. I looked like I was Carrie, you know, from a horror movie, right? And I can just tell you this, that I picked up the mic stand and was going to hit her with the bottom of the mic stand. And I at that moment, the Marines and the African-American women were both converging on this woman, okay? The ladies were jumping over the table. The Marines one was already on stage with me, like they're just quick, okay?
Right.
And I had a second, like, okay, I gotta stop it. So I was just like, just get her out of here, get her out. And it's already a long story. I ended up staying on stage another 15 minutes till the police arrived, right? Because I didn't want it to be a complete melee with her outside. They had her in zip cuffs. I get outside, they're gonna arrest her. A sergeant comes who outranks those guys, which is weird now that you go back and you think about it.
Right.
He's back, she's in zip cuffs in the car, and the sergeant says to me, have you been drinking? How much have you had to drink? And I said, I'm not drinking.
Right.
And I said, what does that have to do with it, even if I was, though, right? And he
goes, like red wine. It's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. right. Yeah, sure, you haven't. I said, I haven't been drinking at all. I said, I've been on stage performing. Right. He said, well, what did you say to her? And I said, listen, I didn't say any. Oh, he said, what did you say to provoke her? I said, I didn't say anything. He's like, well, how come they didn't throw her out if she was, I said, she's been a problem tonight. And they said, how come they didn't throw it out? I said, I don't know. It's my first week here. I have no idea what their protocol is.
Right.
Suffice it to say, they let her go. And that night I went home and I talked to a couple of my friends, one of them being a comedy club owner, the guy who owns all of the improvs and all of Funny Bones. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you have to go tell. He goes, if you got a problem with it, take it up with the DA tomorrow. And he said, you have to go tell them. Because I go, can I do a citizen's arrest? I forgot to say that. Like I pull it out like I'm a night writer. Can I do a citizen's arrest? And he's like, no, if you got a problem, go call the DA. So the comedy club owner said to me, listen, you have to go try to charge her, because if that glass would have hit a patron, the comedy club would be responsible for it.
Right.
If that, you know what I mean? If that glass would have went out and shattered and cut a patron on that, forget it. It'd shut everybody out of business. He's like, this is a precedent. You have to go do it. And so I went down and they treated me like, doesn't this happen all the time? No. Never. I think it was like, that day was like my 18th year anniversary or something. Like, or I don't know what year it was. I'm like, no, it's never happened in the history of, maybe fights, but literally throwing the whole glass from that range. And by the way, she wasn't going to get up and leave either. She threw the glass and sat back down as if
continue. Right.
So they, It was horrible. I left there. I said, this is why rape victims don't report, because if this is what I'm getting, when there were witnesses there, right? Turns out, so I write this long diatribe about it on my Facebook. It gets picked up by a guy named Dylan Guadino, who had a great comedy magazine, and all these other people. They talk about it on The View. Howard Stern talks about it like, you know, this is a theater for all intents and purposes. We're in a Broadway play. You don't treat people like that. I finally get a call from them. They're like, well, we don't have any witnesses. I said, what do you mean you don't have any witnesses? The cops were talking to all those people as they left. The two first ones, not the sergeant, the first two. What do you mean you have no witnesses? They're like, well, it's your word against hers. I go, no, it's not. Hang on. I went on Facebook and I said, if you were there on that day, please let me know. We need eyewitnesses counts. I need it. And boom, 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 36 showed up right there. And I forwarded them off every time the DA, because I wasn't looking for money.
Right.
I wasn't looking for, I asked for her to have a restraining order. I want a restraining order against her, because I don't know, if you're that bold, what the hell you're going to do? You're going to follow me around and not have her be at that comedy club.
Yeah.
And they go, it's not likely she's going to follow you around. Okay, well, this isn't likely.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's highly unlikely.
You're trying to rationalize with an irrational person.
Right.
I said, if I was I remember telling the DA, if I worked at the perfume counter at Macy's and someone came in and chucked a perfume bottle at me, you'd arrest them, correct?
Right.
That's what it is. I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter what I said. It's freedom of speech. It wasn't hostage comedy. She had every right. If she didn't like me, I don't expect you. That's when I started that whole thing, Collin. If you don't like me, good, don't come back.
Right. Right.
I found out later that she was a convicted prostitute. And so obviously I really did hit close to home with the horror stuff. And we were pretty sure she was a confidential informant. So she was able to work with impunity and immunity. But she was a woman that when we did the research about her, you could see she was on every old man website. I just moved to Florida. I'd love to be your companion. You know what I mean? Every one of those.
God.
Yeah. So it was a crazy thing. Hell Gig, it changed a lot. Yeah.
You just had a special drop recently. Could you please tell people about it and where to find you?
I had everything drop recently. I have nothing. I'm in the regathering process. Let's see, the Way After School special dropped March 17th on iTunes and Amazon. And the Showtime has More Women of a Certain Age. I did this thing called Mothers Know Best Sometimes with Jessica Curson. That's on iTunes and everything. Finding the Funnies on Prime for free.
Yep.
HBO has a movie that I did, Everybody Wants to Be Italian. The other movie I did, That's Amore, hasn't come out yet. I got nothing left. I was supposed to be out working it. I'm not a jokey joke. I'm a monologist. I have to have experiences. I have to have a memory, as you see, in order for me to work. Like, I can only talk about the people in this house so much.
Right.
You know?
And talk to them, I'm sure.
At them, through them, with them.
Oh, God. Tammy, thank you so much for doing this. I cannot thank you enough.